Good morning, Don Huffmeister here again with some final remarks on staffing for instrumental music. You'll remember that when I started this series I presented a book that was written by the State Department of Education in Minnesota in 1948 regarding the levels of instruction that they thought would be appropriate for instrumental students and its ratio to the teachers, and it was decided that about 60 students per teacher would be recommended. And we saw from that time, I covered a bit what happened in the 25 years about that I taught in one location. So I saw the district expand from modest size to very large size. And during that time, I traced in a way how lessons went from 20-minute lessons individually to 15-minute lessons to eventually like group lessons, and then maybe even mixed group lessons under certain circumstances. So during a certain number of years there was really an attrition of ratio between students in the district and what the amount of staffing there was for instrumental instruction. It didn't show on the surface and it didn't show up on a ledger, but nonetheless there was less resources being devoted to instrumental music. Then of course we got to the point where it was necessary to cut out the summer programs and various other things that helped the instrumental program, so they had come about over a period of time. And in the end then I also traced in this overview that I've given how the amount of time devoted to the elementary bands and how they were actually programmed outside the day or in the day at a time that wasn't real great. And then I also presented the observation that in some of the junior high schools it was now possible to schedule band directors so that they really had several bands in a row and really almost no time to teach kids either individually or in small light groups. Well, the reason I'm going over this again is that in the final years that I was involved in instrumental music, something came about that was even dramatic, and so I faced it and know what sort of an effect that had on me and the program. Essentially this came about because we had run elementary schools in grades from 1 to 6 and junior high school from 7 through 9 and high school 10 through 12. What happened is because of building space, the district needed to change things, and so they went to grade school buildings of 1 to 4, middle school 5 through 8, and went back to the old-fashioned 9 to 12 high school. In the year that change took place, it became necessary, and they tried to program all of the kids into a middle school setting and setting them up by departments and so on. And so they really offered to the kids a choice between being in choir or being in band. Now, choir meant that they also were, those children, because they were required by the state to have music, they also had the general music students, so the choirs now became a different kind of mixture. And the kids who were programmed for band merely had gone through the part of the program where I introduced the instruments to them, but of course I didn't introduce it to all of the kids who were now in the district. They then, in the summertime, these kids signed up for their classes, and the counselors were required to just ask them, do you want to be in choir or band? And there were any number of kids who said they wanted to be in band, but they had no access to an instrument or any other things that were going to be really helpful, yet they were programmed for the band class. So the very first day in the fall of the year, I was presented with 55 kids in a classroom in the 5th grade only say 50% of them had instruments or access to them, and the others didn't, and really hardly knew some of the instruments that they were indicating they wanted to play. Well, this certainly was disconcerting to me, and it was always so true because of staffing. It was not going to be possible to teach them in like group instruments more than once every 2 weeks. So that would mean right at the beginning of the year you're going to have a trouble setting up a schedule. And of course, by this time in our educational system, the elementary teachers were much less likely to be cordial about allowing kids to leave their classes to come for lessons, because they were under the gun regarding testing and how their students performed and so on. So it became more and more difficult. And the physical education department felt that way about it too, because they didn't want their classes continually interrupted, and of course the kids hardly had any study halls at all. This meant that I was faced with those 55 kids the very first day of school in a classroom for 50 minutes. And the kids were pretty good. I quieted them down and I shot straight with them. I said, you know, this is crazy. There's hardly anybody that can do this, but I think you and I can do it together if you'll cooperate with me. And what I did is I said, I'll teach each one of the instruments that were available for fifth graders under our program for 5 minutes. And everybody in the class has to be absolutely quiet. You can't disturb in any way. And when the 5 minutes are up, I'll expect somebody, you can raise your hands, and I'll go from teaching oboe to picking up the head joint of the flute and showing those how to do that. And I want you all to pay attention, because whether or not you have the instrument or access one right now, you will at some point in the future, and you'll know how to go about doing this. And the kids did. They cooperated greatly on that. Now what I would say is I doubt whether I could have pulled that off when in my first years of teaching. It was because of many, many years of teaching, knowing kids, knowing instruments, and knowing the literature that you're going to teach. It was possible to do it. I wouldn't recommend it. My point is that yes, we have shortchanged the educational arts education in the country, and in many places very, very severely. And so I hope that there's some hope here, because it shows that the kids are still willing to do it. They would give me the privilege of teaching them, and stayed quiet, and I was able to, even if you can believe it, enjoy that too. Okay, so I thought this was important to end this part of the series regarding staffing and taking care of kids. Thanks a lot. Don Huffmeister.